Evening, Chelsea fans. Welcome back to another week of Chelsea Chat with me, Mace, and JB. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell notification. And don't forget to comment below. We'd love to hear your thoughts. So this week we're going to go through the Wolves game, recap on the disaster that sort of went on that game. Looking forward to West Ham and then Arsenal. So let's get started. So, JB, the Wolves game. That was shocking.
It was.
What were your thoughts? I mean, firstly, absolutely gutted because do you know what? Everyone else has been having mixed results that could have really sort of set us apart. Liverpool seemed to be the only one that seemed to be consistent at the moment. So we could really have cemented ourselves as sort of top two into sort of Christmas. And we're just getting into that rut of Christmas, which we always seem to do. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's as you said, it's always December, isn't it? We always seem to have a bad run in December, and obviously it's going to be no different this year. It was a shame, I think, after Lampard made it quite clear that he was expecting a response after the Everton game, for the players to, I don't want to say not turn up, because first half we were okay. Pulisic looked bright. Chilwell looked bright. We were brilliant down that left-hand side, causing them all kinds of problems. And then, obviously, second half, we come out, scored the goal. And then I think because of the way Wolves were playing, clearly just there for the draw, I think the Chelsea players probably just sat back and thought, well, that's it, job done now. And then it wasn't. And, they scored a goal, leveled it up, and we just didn't step it up again. So I think, we had these kind of problems last season. It was that game was probably the closest we've looked to last season's Chelsea this year. And we saw some of the same kind of problems, even, defensively. There were some issues there. The second goal, Zuma could have done better. That's the Zuma of last year. That's not the Zuma of this year. So it was very frustrating to watch that game, especially, as I said, first half we looked bright. The one thing that frustrated me the most was how Lampard's switched Werner and Pulisic. So Pulisic was absolutely doing wonders down that left-hand side in the first half. And then probably 5-10 minutes before the half ended, he switches them. And it just kind of crumbled things. I know, obviously, we scored early in the second half, but from that point onwards, Pulisic just kind of wasn't in the game as much. Werner was having a terrible game. So he should have just swapped him back, but he maintained that change the whole time and didn't alter things. And that really frustrated me because I think Pulisic would have been the key to us winning that game in the end, but he wasn't really given the chance to because he was switched over and it didn't really work on the other side. So I think, it was player mistakes, a lot of bad performances. I think the only two that really played well was Kante and Pulisic. Everyone else seemed to be off the boil. I don't know if that's a bit of fatigue or what, but it just wasn't what we've been seeing for the last few weeks. And it's annoying as well because it's just adding to that record now that we've actually not beaten a team in the top half of the league this year. So the only teams we've actually got results against are teams that are currently in the bottom half.
It's frustrating because I think I look at it and everyone's sort of going, what's not working? The focus is primarily on Havertz, who, credit where credit's due, he's not played well. And to be honest, I don't put a lot of focus on it because I've seen so many players at Chelsea not have a great start, but become absolute stars at the club. It's just at the moment unfortunate that the rest of the squad is now having a dip in form. The focus is being amplified on Havertz because not every other player is sort of stepping up. You're seeing Werner's form dip dramatically. You're seeing probably too much a reliance on someone like Giroud, whereas a couple of weeks ago he wasn't even playing. And then obviously there's a lot of injuries. And I think that's probably the big focus and problem we've got at the moment. Is Lampard likes to play that 4-3-3 sort of style, likes to have one striker in the middle, two wingers, and sort of 3 midfielders, one which pushes forward a bit more. The big challenge at the moment is the number of fit wingers or sort of traditional wingers in that sense, because we've got absolute talent that sits on our sort of squad. But Pulisic is the only out-and-out winger at the moment that is fit to play. There is no sort of Hudson-Odoi. There is no Ziyech. He's really struggling at the moment to sort of play in that same way. And I think this is a big test for Lampard, because in my eyes, we'd be better going to a 5-3-2 in my eyes. Having those wing backs, I mean, I know that we've got Reece James now out, which negates some of that, because you're then going to have to try and rely on someone like Dave to try and sort of do the same job that Reece James does, which he doesn't do as well. But 5 at the back just to shore us up, because we're obviously not playing that well. Having sort of playing Mount ahead of Havertz, if he's playing badly, take him out of the firing line, and then looking towards having 2 up top. I think Werner at the moment is much better as an out-and-out striker than he is as a winger. You can see him at the moment, he just looks lost, trying to play as a traditional winger rather than where he likes to be as a predatory scorer. I think if you had him and Giroud up front at the moment, we'd be a lot better. And I think for the next couple of games, that's got to be the way in which we play, because people are finding Lampard out. Is that he still hasn't found his strongest 11, as much as sort of we over the last couple of weeks have named a few. When you've got a few players out in key positions, we're just being found out because you can't play the same system.
That's the thing. I think, we've said many times what we believe our strongest starting 11 is, and at no point has all 11 of those players been fit at the same time. And that's where we're struggling is keeping them fit in order to field that 11. But as you said, he's, instead of kind of adapting his system in case, I mean, as you said, at the moment, we've got Hudson-Odoi and Ziyech out injured. He's not really adapting the system to try and make the best out of that. Yeah, I mean, against Everton, we didn't even have Pulisic, so we had no out-and-out wingers, but he still tried playing the same way. And you could see there was just not the same kind of creativity there. And it really showed in the game. We struggled to create chances. Obviously, Everton did well to hold us out anyway, but in terms of the Chelsea side of things, we were lacking that creativity. And I think in January, we should potentially be looking not for, like a world-class winger, but we need someone who can come in. I know Andrew looked good against Krasnodar and stuff, but he's still young. You can't just chuck him in. If we've got all these injuries, he can't be starting every game. We need someone that's kind of had regular senior minutes. So I would even look, somewhere in the Championship, maybe someone like Ismail Assar or someone like that, where he'll be happy to come and sit on our bench for when we have our full 11 fit, but he will come in for, a few FA Cup games here and there, or if players get injured, then he'll be starting games. I think he'd be happy to do that at a club like Chelsea. So that's really what we want to be looking at, I think, in January now.
Do you know who I think potentially would be a good fit for that is Damari Gray? He seems to have been left out in the cold in Leicester, and getting some minutes at a club like ours, I think I'd do him well. He's already been almost sort of frozen out of the Leicester squad. And as you say, he's going to be a club player. I doubt he'll probably come to us. He needs to probably go and get sort of a lot of minutes and maintain those minutes. But for me, it's challenging because you've got so many players out, and all of them seem to be in very similar injuries, which also sort of, are we playing the wrong sort of way to keep our players fit? Because at the moment, we've got a great starting 11. As you said, we've named that starting 11 a number of times. But if you look at, as soon as you see an injury to Chilwell, or an injury to James, or an injury to sort of Ziyech, we all panic because you go, there's not a huge depth in squad that are going to step in to sort of really play our system, play our game.
I'd say the depth of our squad in certain areas is brilliant. But there, as you said, there's those few key positions, which seems to be the key positions that we're getting those injuries. is where we don't have that strength. And even when we do, I mean, like if you just look at our wingers when they're all fit, if you pick up one injury on one of the wingers, then Werner, he's not ideal as a winger, but you can put him in there for a game or two if you have to. You've got Hudson-Odoi, who probably wouldn't start at the moment as if he was fit, and then you've got Ziyech and Pulisic, who are two outrageously good wingers. So we do have the strength there. It's just we picked up 3 injuries in that area at the same time, and that's never good for any team. But I mean, you can't. There's no excuses really. If you look at the 11s that we fielded against Everton and the 11 we fielded against Wolves, both of those teams should have won those games on paper. So it's not just obviously the injuries. It's just a case of the players that we did put on that pitch didn't play well enough. So it's a mixture of the both. But we do still need to make sure that we don't just blame injuries and think everything's fine. It needs to be looked at properly and see where these problems are coming from and make sure they get addressed before we play West Ham.
Exactly. I mean, you look at sort of a club like Liverpool at the moment that have had injuries similar to ours and deeply impactful injuries. They've still had the resilience to maintain that level of performance. They've obviously had the blip that was the 7-2 Aston Villa, but almost they've put that behind them and they're still playing well. They're still able to go and beat sort of Crystal Palace, sort of absolutely smash them this weekend. And I know they have injuries here and there, and sometimes it's more impactful than others, but the sign of a club that's going to win the league needs to be able to sort of weather these storms. At the moment, we're not. And it's difficult because we've made a massive overhaul in the summer. So we've brought players in like Werner, we've brought players in like Havertz, and we've expected them to slot in and run from the beginning. Now, Werner is being played out of position, which is having an impact to his form. And Havertz is struggling with adapting to the English Premier League. Sort of, he's not had a squad that's been built around him, and equally he's got a player very similar to him playing on the pitch that's got much better form. So Mount and Havertz is sort of identical in the playing styles, but one's got better form and one's sort of adapted better. It's difficult where at the moment I'm struggling to see where we're going to fit Havertz in, but you can tell that he's got that quality in him, and I just can't work out where we're going to sort of get the best out of him next season, because you don't want to play him up top. You don't really want to play him on the wing. It's in the middle of the park, and that's probably our most congested and the most talent that sits in our club sits in that middle. But that's not saying that hasn't been done before. You look at the club that when we had a couple of years back, when we had Lampard, Essien, Ballack, Deco, all playing in the same squad. It's not to say it can't be done, but you've got to have the right balance and ability to go and play it there, because we had the benefit that we had one great striker up front that could literally handle that sort of great balls coming through. It's just how do you go and manage sort of a problem with a lot of players who are just getting adapting and we're equally adapting as a club to find the rest, to get the best out of them. It'll be interesting. I will love to see, and it'll probably happen early in the year, is us having a fully fit squad and be able to pick that again. But at the moment, we just need to adapt quickly. And that's part of Lampard's maturity. Can he work out the best of the squad and work out almost his sort of top 3 formations, where it's not the one every day? Because Mourinho was a master at this when he was back at Chelsea, is how could you play 5 at the back on one week and then get the best out of like a 4-3-3 the next week? He knew how to get the best out of his players. Lampard's still learning how to do that. He knows one great play and he needs to adapt his game on that. So looking forward, West Ham. So obviously Monday night the game is on. West Ham in quite a good run of form at the moment. Have got some good wins, some interesting sort of players that I wouldn't have really picked to sort of become top scorers, although one's made their way into my fantasy football as a regular in Souček, A, because he's cheap, and B, because he's scoring goals. It's going to be an interesting game. We're on obviously a run of poor form, and we need to get a result. And that's not necessarily something that really drives us all the time. We sometimes struggle to sort of get back into that, especially with the congestion of the squad. What's your thoughts for the game? So, A, what would you like to see Lampard start with those players? And then B, what do you think we need to do to nullify some of the West Ham attacking threat?
I think with James out, obviously Dave will come in. I think with that kind of situation, I think he definitely needs to stick to the 4-3-3 in this game in particular. I was hearing that potentially Ziyech could be back, in which case do you risk him? That's the problem with Arsenal around the corner. It's a difficult one because we have to win this game. There's no getting around that. That it's a must win, because if we lose this, that's 3 losses on the bounce, and now you're not just looking at a blip, you're looking at a horrendous run. So this game is vital for us to win. Hopefully Ziyech is fit enough to play both games. Obviously there's a week in between as well, so that's kind of handy. So I think he'll stick with a 4-3-3. I think we won't see too much in terms of changes in the personnel. You might see a Kovacic instead of Havertz, but I still think you're going to see potentially see Werner on the wing with Giroud in the middle, and either Ziyech or Pulisic on the other side. I think it would be nice to maybe give someone like Werner a rest as well, considering his form has been dipping. Maybe just a little kind of a nudge, like, you're sitting this one out, mate. Think about how you can improve for the next one, because the Arsenal game is obviously so huge as well. So you might see a few little tinkering changes to rectify some problems we've had in the last few games. But it's difficult to tell, because obviously we can't see what's going on in training. You don't know who's, out of the players that have had a terrible week, a terrible game against Wolves. It's been like a solid week since that game. So they've had a lot of time in training, potentially to change the manager's mind, to put them back into the team. They might have, found a bit of a rhythm in training. So having that week, I think, is going to be key. The fact that we've had that week off without having to play a game for 6 days is probably going to hopefully have done them a really big favour for us, and see a bit of form starting again, because we've got a big run of fixtures. Our next few games, you've got obviously West Ham, then we've got Arsenal, you got Villa straight after that, and then we got City first game in 2021, and then you're looking into Fulham and Leicester. So we've got some huge games coming up for us. So we just need to make sure we're keeping those players fit and healthy, and getting them in a good run of form before all of those big games start, and that starts tomorrow.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And I think sort of the point of Ziyech potentially being available is massive for us. I think when you lose a player like Reece James and his ability to cross into the box, having someone like Ziyech is going to be really key for us, because that service from the right side of just playing someone like Werner or potentially Havertz could really sort of knock us for 6, because we've been sort of really blessed this season in the fact that you've got 2 great sort of wing backs in sort of Chilwell and Reece James, able to do the overlap. And even if you've got a more attacking threat in someone like Werner, who doesn't cross as much into the box, you've got sort of your wing backs able to provide that. Dave is not that player. As much as I love him, he's a utility player and will run really far up the pitch, but not necessarily put a pinpoint cross on the back of it. So I think sort of having Ziyech could be sort of saving the day. I think Pulisic and stuff like that. The big thing is, I think Giroud's going to be the right attacking sort of start in the line, because West Ham, we always know, it's like a bullying sort of defensive game. He knows how to play that, whereas you play someone like Werner up there, I think you could just get lost in sort of the mix as part of that. I think we're just going to have to hit them with a lot of pace, and equally just shore up our midfield. I think you'll see Kovacic, you'll see Kante all in the middle, and I think you'll see Mount just as that attacking threat in the middle. Mount's looked a little bit lost after the last couple of games, and I think that's just because he's tired and he hasn't really had an identity in the squad. It's almost sort of like you're going to play in midfield, but Havertz is going to be the main sort of player. He's not played that well, but I can't go too forward as part of that. So I think he's been lost because he's trying to almost do everything. But, so we'll see. I think sort of he's tired, but he needs to sort of probably step up his game a little bit.
Yeah.
And as you say, West Ham is a must-win for us. And the last couple of seasons, it's not necessarily been a guaranteed. They've really upset us on a number of occasions. So we need to go in there. And equally, they're going to be massively sort of defensively structured, but they've got some great attacking threat in Antonio. I may go and switch him out and put him as my triple captain for tomorrow, just to sort of really please all of the absolute weirdos who put people like McTominay as triple captain and stuff like that. But I think for me, I don't think it'll be a high scoring game, and I'll probably eat my words off the back of that. But I think for me, I'm going to go 2-1. What are your thoughts, Jamie?
Yeah, I think it would probably be 2-1, or maybe a similar game to the Leeds game in terms of, we're 2-1 up and they're pushing to equalise and we get them on the counter at the end or something like that. So just to not get the same as you, I'll go 3-1 and hope we get a late goal to just nudge it my way.
And then, so obviously it's a must win for us. We'll keep you guys up to date on all the social media channels as to sort of that results. We then straight into the Arsenal game pretty much. So Boxing Day. What are your thoughts? Because we are at the moment in a pretty poor run of form, but that's probably equally said for all the Arsenal fans out there.
I think they'd kill to be in our position at the moment, wouldn't they?
It's interesting because they're in such a poor run of form that once again we're in the real risk of them turning their season around with us.
Yes.
So what's your thoughts for the Arsenal game? So looking forward after.
Exactly what you just said. I'm very nervous that we'll be the ones that give them that win that they so desperately need. I mean, I speak to a lot of Arsenal fans, so I wouldn't hear the end of it. Considering, I mean, I've obviously given out my fair share of stick over the last few weeks about their relegation battle. Obviously, they're are looking up quite a lot, and I keep reminding them they also need to look behind them because Brighton could have overtaken them today if they'd won. So it kind of shows the kind of sorry state that they're in at the moment. I mean, if you look at even over the last 5 games, you're looking at form, we should beat them. I think we're a better side than them, and but that doesn't matter at all when it comes to the 90 minutes, and anything can happen, which is the concerning part. I think if you'd asked me this 2 weeks ago, when we were feeling happy and confident and we was on this big unbeaten run, I would have said we'll absolutely spank them. But now I'm not feeling so confident about any game. So I think if that would be the perfect game for our ideal starting 11 to come back for, and to have everyone fit and fresh. But it's tough. I personally, I would have that game down as a draw. It's one of those where you can imagine them kind of digging their heels in and us trying to blow them out the water and it just not clicking. I can imagine something like a 1-1.
Yeah, it's interesting. I happen to agree. I think you'll see someone like Williams turn up after not playing for the whole season.
Written, isn't it? Written in the stars.
But what's interesting, so obviously, just to sort of put the context to the table for all the listeners out there, we're currently sitting in 8th, 22 points. But it's so tight in it. It's sort of between sort of 4th and even 10th, it's sort of 3 points in it. So there's not too much in there. But the worrying thing is if West Ham beat us tomorrow, they'll go ahead of us and we'll drop into 10th. Even if sort of Aston Villa sort of win tonight, sorry. I mean, if we win tomorrow and get 3 points, we should, I believe, on goal difference, go ahead of Tottenham. So we'll go straight into 5th. So 1 point behind Everton. Arsenal are currently on 14 points. I don't think we're in that sorry state of affairs quite yet.
Not yet, no. See how the next few games go.
It's frustrating. As a Chelsea fan, as you say, last time I was on the podcast, and I'm going to sort of leave it there because I left on a high and came back on a low. I'm just saying. It's sort of, you can end on such a high and 2 games can literally change sort of your form. Tottenham are in the same spot as us in the fact that you've got a club that, 2 games and we've had no points from that, but previous was 14 games unbeaten, I believe. So anything can happen pretty quickly. I think we just need to react quickly and build our confidence again, especially with some big clubs coming in. And as you say, we haven't beaten the club in the top half. That doesn't really help because the next 2 games are both in the bottom half, and that's just a minor dig at Arsenal. But with City not playing well, that game's set up for a draw. But I want to try and win. If we can get a win over City, that'll be big for us.
Yeah, that'll be a big confidence boost to push us on, wouldn't it?
So obviously 2 big games, 6 big points. Hopefully that'll be 6 points in the bag. That'll be a great Christmas present for me, especially with all the rubbish that's going on in the rest of the world. Tier 4, eat your heart out. If we can get 6 points from those 2 big games, it'd be amazing if we can. And it'd be an interesting entrance into sort of January because, as you say, it'll probably, depending on these results, it will therefore vary as to what sort of mindset we need to go in and how big our checkbook needs to be to sort of really turn our season around. Because investing 200 million in the beginning of the season is still going to have questions that we sort of managed to sort of brush those away for a couple of weeks. I think if any loss over the Christmas break, they'll very much be calling for Lampard's head again and very quickly going back onto how much we've spent, which would be very interesting. But we'll keep you up to date on our social media profiles as the week goes on. And we'll also keep you up to date in the next one around sort of January transfer window, as to sort of who we're being targeted with and who actually may be exiting from the door as well, because there's a number of those potentials. Apart from that, Chelsea fans, you have a great Christmas and you stay classy.